Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Talking Insomnia episode. I'm very, very glad to have Pat with me here. Thank you.
It's great to be here. It's great to meet you.
So, for those of you who don't know Pat, you've been a real supporter of the channel. So many nice comments, and you sent so many really encouraging letters. So, I want to thank you for that, and thank you for coming aboard again.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I know you worked with Martin, and again, you learned a lot from the channel here. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about what happened, and we'll go from there.
Okay. It was last May. My husband and I had some rowdy neighbors living next door to us. And so there was a series of parties that went into the wee hours. And so we were woken up many nights having to call the police, as were our neighbors. And it was just a really awful period of time. And so I remember one night going to bed and I said to my husband, I'm actually afraid to go to sleep because I know that I'm going to be woken up. And he just said, oh, don't worry about it. Maybe not. Well, anyway, by the time August came around, I had been having a few really rough nights, but not in a chronic kind of way. But then August came about and I started having one really difficult night after another, which sort of turned into chronic insomnia. And I'm pretty convinced that my reaction to my not sleeping was what caused the chronic insomnia, because I had really become very irrational about it, even getting angry at my husband for it. And just something came over me that was like, I don't know, it was almost too like I had been diagnosed with a horrible illness or something. I'm kind of a health obsessed person. Like I think a lot of us, insomniacs or former insomniacs are. And so the fact that I wasn't sleeping was just so alarming because I thought all sorts of horrible things were going to happen to me. So that's how it started. And it took me a while before I realized what the cause of it was. I just thought, I don't know, this was something that happens, when you're at my stage of life, hormonal or something. But then one day I just had that sort of aha moment when I realized, it was because of my saying that I was afraid to go to sleep and then my reaction to not being able to sleep. So that's really how it all started.
Very well. You explained it with such clarity there, and I want to ask first. I want to say I understand that's like so from May until August. You had some nights in between, like here and there, that you struggled a little bit, but it wasn't really a big deal. But then in August, that's when it became more like ongoing, right?
It was just night after night. I wasn't sleeping or barely sleeping. And then I just said, my God, what's wrong with me? This is terrible. And one night I remember thinking I should go to the emergency room. Something is horribly wrong with me. Crying and saying, oh my God. And it was just so irrational. And but I think it was, again, probably because I'm a little bit health obsessed and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have some terrible disease. This is just not normal. And so.
And during that phase there, did you go through like what so many people go through about like trying changing your bedtime routine and supplements and things like that, or not so much?
I called my primary care doctor, and I think it was the nurse practitioner told me to take a couple of Tylenol and drink some chamomile tea. And that had zero effect. Maybe stay up a little later. Maybe you're not really that tired, when you're going to sleep and that kind of thing. Nothing worked. I think I tried valerian root. Nothing worked. Nothing.
Exactly.
Zero. So anyone out there, don't ever get all that stuff because it does not work. And you have said so yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only does it, I mean, there's kind of like, I talk about like the path of confusion or frustration, which is like you take something and nothing happens, then you're frustrated and you can be more scared. You think something's really wrong because this isn't working, right?
Right.
But then when someone takes like valerian root and then they happen to sleep a bit more that night, that can actually in a way be quote unquote worse, because then they think that, oh, something's wrong with me and I need this to sleep, and they feel kind of okay for a while, but then they don't sleep. Then it's like, oh, I need something else, so either way, it doesn't help. Okay, so we have that period. Now, what was it, kind of just like an insight, like it just came to you that you saw what was going on, somewhat like that, or?
Yeah, I think also I started, of course, doing all the Googling, and then I went to YouTube, and that's when I found your channel and I found Martin's channel. And I think after educating myself about insomnia and why it occurs, and I think it was, I don't know if it was you or Martin, I can't remember, that talked about those 3 Ps, perpetuating and predisposed and precipitating factors that, tend to go with insomnia. And then I started thinking, like, was there something? And then it just dawned on me, yeah, when you say I'm afraid to go to sleep, I mean, what is that saying to your brain, right? And then by reacting to it the way I did, I think that's what brought it on. It was just, my brain was just, like you talk about, in that protection mode, thinking this was this perceived threat. And so, yeah, that's why I think finding your channel made all the difference. I mean, it didn't cure my insomnia, because I did go through the CBTi, I think starting in October, which helped a little bit, but just the education and knowing what's happening to you, and knowing that there's nothing really wrong with you, and that it's really all up here, and it's just, trying to change your thinking about it. And so, yeah, that was so key. It's just to educate yourself. It really is.
Absolutely. I understand. So it was actually, you started to tune into Martin's channel, and then applying that, you were like, that's when you're like, aha, now I see. Right?
Yes. And I, remember listening to, I think it was Martin's channel, when he described insomnia as like a backyard bully. The more attention you pay to it, the worse it becomes. And so I said, okay, I've got to get my head on straight about this. I said, even if I don't sleep, I'm going to act as though I did. I sort of fake it till you make it kind of thing. So it was hard. I'd get up and I'd feel awful, but I'd go out and take my walk, or I even ran. I just pretended I had had a good night's sleep, because I said, I can't live like this. I was just so down in the dumps every single day. It was affecting my husband, and it was, and that was tough. That was really hard to do. But I said, well, what's the alternative? Sit around here and feel sorry for myself? And so that was really helpful. I didn't realize that the more I thought about it, obsessed about it, the worse it was going to get.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And staying on that for a second, because I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this are going to be real curious. I want to actually first say that I think you're absolutely right. Like, the more you try to get away from it and hide from the bully, so to speak, the more influence they have over you. That's so true. And now the tricky thing with saying then, I'm still going to have a good day, it can be that it can become this effort in itself, like, I'm having a great day, but why am I not sleeping more, etc. But when you do it with the sense like, I'm not going to let this affect me, then it's helpful. But I guess my question to you becomes, it was really tough when you did that, but was it pretty soon after that you saw that this is helpful, or did it take a while before you saw that this is actually helpful?
It took a while. I mean, I didn't start the therapy until the beginning of October. And it didn't really help me sleep any better. No, to answer your question, no, it didn't. But yet I realized at the end of the day that I could still have a pretty decent day. And I felt strong because of it, because I thought, oh, I could have, like I said, just sit around the house and, oh my God, I can't sleep. And so it didn't help me sleep much better then. But yet I could at least kind of enjoy myself during the day and not be so obsessed. It's sure I was still having these thoughts. Am I going to sleep tonight? I wish this was over. I can't stand this. Those thoughts were still entering into my head all the time. But I just realized, yeah, I could go and see a friend. I could, take a nice walk. I could have a nice dinner with my husband at night, things like that. Um, my day wasn't horrible. It was,
Exactly.
I could get through it, and it was actually pleasant until
Such
nighttime came along, and then I was like, "Am I going to sleep tonight?"
yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I did, but many times I didn't. So
Yes. Oh, so well said. Like, and that's so good for everyone that tunes in here to hear that it's not like if you do that with the intent of making yourself sleep, it's not going to help. But if you do it just like you did, what happened was that you saw that even if I don't sleep much, I can still have a good day.
yes.
So powerful. Like you have agency over your life again, start taking it back. And now I wanted to ask you, or actually I want to do this. I want to just like spend share my thoughts on what happened,
Sure.
and
Yep.
then go into because you worked with Martin, so I want to hear about like when you started working with him and how things happened from there on. But this story is one thing that is so common with your story is this, where there is some kind of trigger, and then there's a period of time where it doesn't bother you too much, but then it starts really, it really starts bothering you. And the way I really think about it now is that you have again this trigger that starts some kind of fear, but it's not so strong. Like it's on the radar, but it's not like a big item on the brain's like, yeah, being awake at night can be a little bit of a threat, but it's not a big threat. Here and there it pops up. But what happens during that time, which for you was kind of like between May and August, was sort of like the brain in a way is being primed. It's being primed little by little to see that sleep, like being awake at night is a threat. And then when there's some other thing that happens, now it's like, yes, it is a real threat. Then it goes full blown, but it's like kind of this priming period, right?
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because I think it was last March, that my husband and I had gone to New York City for the weekend. It was right before the pandemic. And I remember one night we stayed 2 nights in a hotel, and one night I slept fine. And the next night, I swear I was up the whole night. I don't know why. And so I felt really bleary eyed. And I said to him that in the morning, I didn't sleep all night. I don't know why. And but I said, oh, well, I'll just doze on the plane on the way home and go to bed early. And I never thought about it again. Not at all. But then I think when things started up in May with the neighbors, and then I was having more frequent episodes, I think it was sort of starting to get etched in my brain that this was a problem. It was very stressful. And it was just, wondering, is this ever going to end? Is this going to be every single night? It was in the summertime, and it was, so they were having these parties outside. And so, so.
Totally. Like it's exactly what's kind of like you described what I was kind of contextualizing, if you will. And, and weirdly here, and this can sound kind of insensitive, but I think it's important for everyone to hear this, is that the fact that for you in August, it became like this kind of full blown insomnia in a way can be helpful instead of having lived in this kind of like fear and having a little bit of control for years, which happens to a lot of people.
Right. Yes. Yep.
So anyway, so that happened, and you found my channel and Martin's channel, and then you decided, I think I want to work with, and you worked with Martin, right?
I worked with him. I watched mainly his videos, and we had some emails going back and forth. But I didn't work with him. He was not my coach.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, so you didn't enroll in his program?
I did enroll in his program. I hired a therapist to do the CBTi. And at the end of September, beginning of October, I started with the therapy with him. And, it wasn't that helpful, to tell you the truth. I worked with him for 8 weeks, and my sleep did improve, but not that much, as much as I thought it would. I found the CBTi it was very textbook-like. It was, I hated getting out of bed. It was the winter time, and it was cold, and I I don't know. I just didn't feel as though it was really work. It did work. Like I say, my sleep improved probably after about 8 weeks, but not that much. Maybe it was 20% better, which was still a lot when you think of it. But I didn't feel as though I got a lot of the cognitive part of this, which I felt like I needed more than the behavioral. I felt like I had to change my thinking. So that wasn't really, I was a little disappointed with that therapy. I don't know if it was the person or just the actual protocol, whatever you want to call it, that was just it was too strict. I couldn't stand the sleep log. And you know what, Daniel, I have to say, going through that kept me thinking about sleep so much. It really did. That log, I'd get up in the morning and I'd try to fill it out and it would look terrible. And then I'd have to go over it with a therapist once a week. And then he'd be like, oh, wow, you didn't really sleep hardly off. Like, no, I didn't. And so, he's like, oh, are you, stressed? And I said, yeah, I'm stressed because I can't sleep. So, so that was, I think his approach was just very, very textbook. And I think that, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think that everyone's different how they need to deal with this. That might work for some people. I mean, I think it has good results, but for me, it just didn't work. I just felt listening to you, reading your 2 books, talking with Martin, that really was what got me over it. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Now I understand. So, I think it's so helpful to talk about this, Pat, because you've read my books, so you know this, and I wrote this specifically in This Is Nato. That was kind of part of the opening there, that what made me open my eyes, like what opened my eyes, was to hear from so many people who said, I tried CBTi and it kind of helped a little bit, but then I had trouble again, or it made me more obsessed about sleep. And I really realized that it is, like you said, it is, in my opinion, it is too rigid. It is like there's some understanding of it that isn't really there, etc. And I was literally yesterday, I had this like thought about flexibility in my mind. I was going to send this tweet out, and it was going to go like this: that we often ask our clients to be flexible in how they see things, but how flexible is CBTi? How flexible is it really?
Yeah, and the funny thing too is, I think it was around Thanksgiving of last year, and I said to the therapist, we had been working together for maybe 7 or 8 weeks, something like that. And I said, you know what, I just need to take a break for 2 weeks. I was meeting with him once a week. And I said, I really need to take a 2-week break, and I'm not going to keep the sleep log. And I'm going to go to bed when I'm tired. I'm just going to kind of go it along with this and just try to figure it out. We said, okay, that's fine. And sure enough, those 2 weeks, I slept much better than I had in the 8 weeks that I had been working with him. So,
oh my gosh,
we met up again 2 weeks, and he said, oh, how are things? And I said, actually much better. I said, I'm not sleeping, 7 or 8 hours a night, but I'm maybe getting 5 or 6, which was a lot considering what I had been getting. So he said, oh, so at that point we just agreed that we would sort of kind of end it. And he said, you sort of know what to do. And I said, yes, I do. And yeah, he was very nice. And I just think his approach was just not for me. He was, I'm sure, good for some people. He was probably great, but for me, it just didn't work. So
I think, Pat, your experience is so common. And I do believe, like, I don't want to spend too much on this because this is kind of my favorite topic and I can go on about this forever. But I think of like the CBTi is so focused on this like sleep restriction therapy and stimulus control, right? And when somebody has had a lot of trouble sleeping for a while and you tell them you can only be in bed for 6 hours, that can lead that person to kind of a shock to the system. And then they're like, okay, and I'm going to do this. And they have faith in it. And then they start sleeping, not because they spent less time in bed, because it's just a change and something they have to believe in. And if that person is quote unquote lucky, they can see like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, I can sleep, and it's sort of it seems to work, but it's not working because you're forcing sleep, which CBTi in a way implies. It's working just because you have faith in it, but that can also be problematic, because that person can graduate from an 8-week course and think, yes, I got these techniques, I know what to do, and then when they have trouble sleeping, they're like, oh no, these techniques doesn't work this time. So they're still vulnerable when that happens, you know. So, but anyway, that's, I think, it's super helpful that you share this. And now I want to ask you a question, which is, you know, not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious about this one. You know, you had tuned into my channel and Martin's channel, yet you didn't work with us. You chose a CBTi therapist locally. What made you choose that?
That's a good question, actually. I think initially I started when I was reading about insomnia, chronic insomnia. You know, I read that the best approach to treat it is the CBTi. So then I immediately, you know, it took me a while, because right now therapists are, you know, hard to come by, I think, with the pandemic and all of that. So, but anyway, I found someone. So I started working with him, thinking that that's what I need.
This is the gold standard. This is what I need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I figured, you know, this was the best way to go. So, but I should have, because I found the two of you before I found him. So I should have worked with one, or, you know, either you or Martin or both or whatever. But because I think I probably would have gotten over it a lot faster than I did with this therapist. But that's kind of how it went. I don't know why I didn't work with you guys more, you know, as an actual coach, or join your program kind of thing. But yeah, so yeah, because it took me, I'm trying to think, I started working with a therapist in October at the beginning. And I think my sleep was pretty much back on track. It took a while. It was probably January.
Yeah. And I wanted to go there. Thanks for sharing that. And I completely understand, because we often hear that, you know, CBTi is the gold standard, and it's very natural to think that, of course, I want the kind of the best, but there are some problems with kind of traditional CBTi, as I talk a lot about. But that said, I'm super happy, because it's a happy ending, you know, like you did well either way, which is great. But staying on that topic then, so you took this course, you noted that you actually slept better when you were kind of like more relaxed about it. There was this pressure was gone of the sleep diary and keeping track and all of that. And from then on, what happened from then on, from October to January?
So let's see, October. So I worked with this therapist like until Thanksgiving. So let's call it the end of November. And I for a while I was doing well with him, sleeping better, because my husband said, "Boy, I think you're over this," and I said, "Oh, I don't know." And then I'd have a relapse, and then I'd have to fill out the diary, sleep log, and show him, and he'd be like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And you know, his approach was, I felt like, it was a little harsh, like, and I just said, you know, I didn't know. I couldn't control it. I just was having trouble again. So it was very kind of up and down. I could have a good patch and then a not so great patch. And then, so that was the end of November was when I stopped the therapy with him, and just did my own thing, just kept, you know, I was emailing you, watching all your videos, asking you questions. And so things started to improve. You know, I would still have a bad night here and there, but I didn't react to it. I just said, okay, this is one night. It isn't, you know, it isn't horrible. And I learned that if you react to it the way you did, then you're going to be right back where you were. So that was so helpful to just accept it, like you talk about in the natto, you know, and just sort of accept it and say that's okay. It was a bad night. It's fine, you know. So that went on for probably December, January. So I mean, I can't say like what the actual date was when my sleep kind of got back to normal, but it was around January. And even then, some nights it would just be 5 hours, 6 hours. I refused to keep track of it, because all I knew, Daniel, was that when I woke up, I felt fine. I knew that I had slept, and I never look at the clock, thanks to you, never, ever, ever. And so I don't know what time I woke up. I don't know how long I was awake. I don't know. All I knew is when my husband got up, it was probably 5:30 or 6, and but I don't keep track of how long I sleep. Some nights I sleep 7 or 8 hours now. Some nights I sleep 6. Some nights I could sleep 5. I don't really care, you know. I just want to feel, when I wake up, feel fine, feel rested.
Yes. And speaking of that, like for people who tune into this, that there are probably nights where you don't feel rested, but then you're like, well, I didn't feel rested, and you don't do much about that, right?
Exactly. It's just sometimes I feel, I can't remember the last time in the morning that I didn't feel okay. It's been quite a while. But if I need to take a nap, if I need to get to bed a little earlier, it's fine. Sometimes if I just get busy doing things, I don't even think about it. It's just, everyone has nights like that when you don't get enough sleep. You're worried about something, you wake up and you're awake for 2 hours, and that's to me is very normal.
Absolutely. There's just two things that just popped in my mind that I really want to talk about here, which was number one, which was, and this is for everyone that's tuning in here, like these, I call them success stories, which I'm a little conflicted about because success implies like you have to do something, but I think it brings hope. So I still call it success story. So when you have a success story like you, Pat, when people listen to this, what can be a little tricky here is that we kind of compress a year of your life into like 40 minutes or 30 minutes. And then people who hear this can just hear like, oh, I have to accept it. How can I accept it? How can I accept it? But for everyone tuning in here, like for Pat, it wasn't like you could accept it like that. It was learning about yourself, learning about sleep. It was a journey. So anyone out there, just keep that in mind, that this is kind of we compress everything here. And the second thing was, why I often tell people, like, be mindful of who you speak to about your trouble sleeping, because oftentimes if you talk to a friend who's never had any trouble sleeping themselves, they may just go like, what are you talking about? Right. And that reaction just makes you feel like, oh, there's really something wrong with me. And where I said that was because you almost got that reaction from your own therapist, which is like so much worse in a way, right?
It wasn't helpful. I just felt as though, I needed something more positive. I don't know if he felt that he was failing somehow because I wasn't making the progress that I should have made. But it wasn't, I don't know, his approach just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I remember you had a chapter in your book, Set It and Forget It, about be careful who you tell about your insomnia. And the only people that knew that I was going through this was my husband and my 2 kids, adult kids. I didn't tell anyone else because I didn't want people asking me, oh, how's it going? How's it going? My God, are you sleeping? That's awful. You can't sleep. And I just said, I'm just going to not talk about it, because also that just brings it into my head more. That it's in talking about, if I talk to a friend about it, oh, and then we could spend an hour talking about. I didn't want that. I just wanted to see my friends and see my neighbors and just be like, hi, how are you? And just act normal. Because it's funny, and I think I told Martin this, in the mornings I'd get up and my husband would get up before me, and I'd come downstairs, and every morning he would say to me, did you sleep? How is it? And I'd just be like, oh, no. And, sometimes I burst into tears. Sometimes he'd be like, oh, it's okay. And so finally one day I said to him, you are so kind and you're so concerned. I said, but you know what? Don't ask me anymore, please. Because I almost felt like, I don't know, I was just like on at the stage or something, and I was being judged, and he wasn't doing that. He was asking me because he was concerned, obviously, but I just said, just say good morning and I'll just grab my coffee, and that's it. So he said, okay, but I hope you know I care. I said, of course I know you care, but I said, it's, I I don't know, it just made me feel like I was on the spot. I'd get out of bed and be
Absolutely.
like, oh no, I got to go downstairs and like say I didn't sleep again. So I just felt like the less attention I paid to this, the better it was,
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
yeah.
And just to comment on that, just real briefly, like many of my clients that I start working with tell me almost like every day, like what their sleep was like. Last night I slept better, but this, and then of course, especially when you start working with somebody, that's very natural. But if you think about it, if your day starts with an evaluation of how your night was, and if you do that every day, so
Yeah.
much performance anxiety comes from that.
That's the word I was looking for, the performance anxiety. That's how I felt when I'd come downstairs. Like, oh, like I'm such a failure. I wanted to say, oh my God, I slept great. I slept like a baby. Oh, it's great. But I just come down and, he could just tell by the look on my face. I was like, oh, another tough night. But yeah, so that performance anxiety, and I did at times, I felt like when I was working with a therapist, when I had a bad week, I that's how I felt, like I'm such a failure. Like, what does he think of me? And so I think if I had had more of the cognitive part of the therapy, that would have helped. But there was none of that. It was just like, okay, I had to go over the sleep log with him every week when we met. And, we'd talk for a few minutes, and then that was about it. I was just kind of like, I don't know, that was not really, it wasn't helpful, but
100%. And again, to always try to be empathetic and understanding of other people's situation. I think it's very possible, because the like what I often talk about is like that the fundamental misunderstanding, I think, is that in much of like CBTi, maybe not the like in much of how it's practiced, at least, it's this misunderstanding that if you don't sleep, it's simply because you aren't sleepy enough. And then it becomes logical to be like, okay, we're going to have this graph and you're going to push yourself and then this is going to happen. But it misses the point, which is that it's really more of an anxiety than it's not a sleep drive problem. But anyway, so really glad. So January, now we are in, we're several months into this year. You've been sleeping, you haven't had a struggle, which is fantastic. So I guess my final question becomes, to someone that's in this struggle, they're confused, they're trying to find a way to, sleep well again, etc. What, if you would pick, one kind of advice or insight or tip, what would you like to share?
I think that you really have to get to a point where you say you're going to stop worrying. You're going to really try hard to stop worrying and realize that your whole life isn't sort of built around how many hours you sleep, and you can't treat sleep as though, as long as I sleep 7 or 8 hours a night, my life's going to be perfect or something. It isn't. I mean, and I remember in your book that really, really resonated with me, and Set It and Forget It, I think you had a little short chapter on how insomnia ends. And basically you said when you stop worrying. And that was so true. That was just like, that's it. I have to let this go. I cannot, keep thinking about this and obsessing about it. And what if I don't sleep tonight? And what if I don't know? And so I finally was, with your help and with Martin's help, able to get my mind in a better place. And what also helped was, and you talked about this a lot on your channel, was welcoming the scary thoughts and saying, instead of trying to drive them away, saying, okay, brain, I hear you. I am worried about sleeping tonight. I wonder if I'm going to fall asleep. Is it going to take me 3 hours or 2 hours or 15 minutes? Or, okay, I hear you. I am a little anxious, but I'm okay. And so I started welcoming those scary thoughts and just letting my brain know that it isn't really a threat. And that was huge, huge. Yeah. So I never would have known to do that if I hadn't, you know, um, watched your channel and listened to you, because I would have kept trying to just drive those thoughts away and just sort of bury them and bury them. And that isn't that isn't the right approach. I never realized that. I thought just divert your thinking, think about something else. Don't think about that. And even sometimes now I can sort of, before I go to bed, I'll say, gee, I wonder, am I going to sleep well tonight? I mean, it isn't like it's fleeting. But I still sometimes, I still struggle a little bit once in a while. I might wake up and be awake for an hour or two in the middle of the night, but it's fine. I just lie there. I'm calm. I go on one of your visual journeys that you talked about and think about a nice vacation that we've taken, and that helped too. But I find I don't have to do that too much anymore. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, a lot of people do. My husband sometimes will be awake for an hour or two, and I just think a lot of people do that, and it's normal, and it's fine. Just accept it.
It's a really, really great summary. And yeah, I just want to say I'm so happy that you came across the channels. And I think, I'm hopeful with the time, the teaching that, with myself, Martin, and other people have the same type of teaching, that it will reach people much earlier and be much more of the first thing you hear about. And you being here is part of that change that we hope to see in the sleep universe. So I want to just thank you so much.
Oh, sure. And can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
One other thing that and probably a lot of people on your channel, or anyone struggling with chronic insomnia, worry that when they do have success, that in the back of their mind is always going to be, what if this comes back? What if this comes back? And again, in your book, you said, you wrote about that and saying, you just don't, push this monster down the stairs in the basement and it stays there. And then one day it just creeps back up. It is all about reacting to, it's only going to return if you have a couple of bad nights and you react to it so badly, but if you just learn the acceptance and, like you said, not attached to the outcome, the natto, that's the key. And that was like a huge relief to me, saying like, no, I'm not going to go through this again, because now I realize, don't react to a bad night's sleep, just take it in stride and you'll probably sleep better the next night, and that kind of thing. So that was, I think people need to, I hope they realize that once you do get through this journey, you won't go through it again unless you react to it so badly, the way that I did. So yeah.
No, that's really, really, really important. And because almost everyone, or most people that have gone through this journey, as you say, everyone will have a night of little sleep. That is going to happen to everyone. And when someone starts reacting a little bit and they start thinking, oh no, it's been 2 nights I haven't slept, etc., then they often think it's back, but it isn't. It's just, again, that your fear is back. You can say your fear is back and your thinking is a little bit back, but insomnia isn't a thing. Like it can only be trouble again if you, as you said, start like trying to escape it or respond to it. So anyone there having like a speed bump, listen to Pat. You are not going to go back to where you were.
Right, exactly. And yeah, like I said, your books were so helpful, and all of your videos. And thank you for answering all of my questions. And, it just, it really got me through the sort of last part of my journey that I, where I got to a much better place. So I'm very grateful.
Super. This is, I often say this on the channel, that like hearing what you just said here is like, it's the gas that keeps the tank always full, like you're just seeing people do better and etc. It just makes you happy and makes it so easy to keep learning and teaching and
Yes.
doing the work I do.
I think you're in the right profession.
I believe so too.
Yes, that's great.
Well, Pat, yes, thanks again, and I just want to say, stay in touch, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good, Daniel. Thank you very much. It was great to meet you.